I remember before I met Scott, Laci telling me all these things about him. And I remember saying, as her mother, I hope he's not filling her with crap.
They were just a cute couple. They acted like newlyweds.
Scott wasn't engaging the media. We figured that eventually he would talk to us.
On Christmas Eve 2002, a husband called 911 to report his 8 months pregnant wife missing.
I got you?
Yes, my son-in-law called. He was saying, well, this morning at 9:30, my daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park.
Mm-hmm.
The dog came home with just the leash shot.
And the dog came back without your daughter?
Right.
Okay, what is your address, sister?
Well, I'm not.
What he didn't know was that his own lies would unravel one of America's most shocking murder cases, turning him from grieving spouse into the nation's most hated man. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet streets of Modesto, California, where white picket fences and manicured lawns painted the picture of suburban paradise. But beneath this veneer of American dreams lived secrets dark enough to shatter lives forever. Laci Peterson embodied everything this community cherished: a radiant 27-year-old substitute teacher with an infectious smile, carrying her first child, a son she and her husband Scott had already named Connor. December 24th, 2002 should have been filled with the warmth of Christmas anticipation. Instead, it became the day that would expose the rotting core of what appeared to be a perfect marriage. When Scott Peterson dialed emergency services that evening, claiming his wife had vanished during a morning walk with their golden retriever, he unknowingly set in motion a media circus that would captivate the nation for years. But this story isn't just about a missing person case that spiraled into murder. It's about how a man's web of deception slowly strangled the truth, revealing a personality so calculating that even seasoned detectives would struggle to believe the depths of his coldness. To understand the magnitude of what happened, you need to understand what was lost. Laci Rocha met Scott Peterson in 1994 at a cafe in Morro Bay, California. She was a student at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, studying ornamental horticulture, dreaming of opening her own restaurant. Scott was pursuing agricultural business, charming everyone with his easy smile and seemingly genuine nature. Their friends described them as magnetic together, Laci's warmth perfectly complementing Scott's confidence. She had a laugh that could fill a room, an energy that drew people into her orbit. When they married in 1997, the wedding photos captured what looked like genuine joy, two people who had found their perfect match. The couple settled in Modesto, Scott's hometown, where they bought a modest house on Covenant Avenue. Laci threw herself into making their home beautiful, planting gardens, hosting dinner parties, building the life she'd always envisioned. Scott launched a fertilizer business, traveling frequently for sales calls, but always returning to Laci's embrace. By 2002, their dream seemed complete. Laci was glowing with pregnancy, decorating the nursery in a cheerful yellow since they wanted to be surprised by the baby's gender. She had already picked out Christmas presents for little Connor, planning his first holiday with the excitement only expectant mothers understand. But what their friends and family couldn't see was the fault line running beneath this perfect facade, a crack that had been widening for months. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and cold in Modesto. According to Scott's account, Laci planned to walk their dog Mackenzie, then spend the day preparing for Christmas dinner with her family. Scott claimed he was heading to Berkeley Marina to fish for sturgeon, an unusual choice given his lack of recent fishing experience and the holiday timing. The last confirmed sighting of Laci alive came from neighbor Amy Rocha around 10:15 a.m., who saw her walking Mackenzie. What happened in the hours that followed would become the subject of intense scrutiny, filled with inconsistencies that would ultimately damn Scott Peterson. When Scott returned from his fishing trip that evening, around 4:30 p.m., he found Mackenzie wandering the neighborhood, still wearing his leash. The house was empty. Laci's purse sat on the kitchen counter. Her car remained in the garage. Everything appeared normal except for one crucial detail. Laci was gone. Scott called Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, asking if she'd heard from her daughter. The concern in his voice sounded genuine, but something felt off to Sharon. Why hadn't he called earlier if he'd been worried? Why did he sound so calm? By evening, when Laci failed to show up for Christmas Eve dinner, something unthinkable for someone who lived for family gatherings, panic set in. Scott finally called 911 at 5:47 p.m., reporting his wife missing. The initial police response treated it as a standard missing person case. Pregnant women didn't usually run away, but maybe Laci had suffered a medical emergency or accident during her walk. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, finding no immediate signs of foul play. But Detective Al Brocchini, assigned to the case, noticed something troubling in Scott's demeanor. While Laci's family dissolved into tears and frantic searching, Scott remained eerily composed, almost detached. When asked about his fishing trip, Scott's details seemed rehearsed, lacking the natural flow of genuine memory.
That's when I heard about it. I didn't know nothing about it until I was having my Christmas Eve dinner when I got the call, and then I drove down.
The first person you focus at in a homicide investigation is the person closest to the victim and the last person to see the victim. And of course, boom, boom, we got both of those with Scott.
He claims that he woke up in the morning and he and Laci had breakfast together. They watched the Martha Stewart show on television. They were together. She ate cereal.
She got dressed. She curled her hair. She put her shoes on.
Within days, the Laci Peterson disappearance became a media sensation. Her photograph, radiant and pregnant, appeared on every news channel, her story touching hearts across America. Volunteers flooded Modesto, organizing search parties, hanging missing person flyers, praying for her safe return. Scott played the role of desperate husband perfectly, appearing at press conferences with red-rimmed eyes, pleading for Laci's return. "We just want to get Laci and Connor home safe," he said, voice breaking at all the right moments. The performance was so convincing that even hardened reporters found themselves sympathetic, but investigators were growing suspicious. Scott's alibi contained troubling inconsistencies. He claimed to have purchased a fishing license on December 20th, yet records showed he bought it on December 23rd, the day before Laci disappeared. His story about what type of fish he was targeting kept changing. Most puzzling, he'd driven 90 miles to fish in San Francisco Bay when dozens of closer locations offered better fishing. Detective Craig Grogan began digging deeper into Scott's background, uncovering a pattern of lies that stretched back months. The fertilizer salesman had been living a double life, one that would shock even Laci's closest friends. On December 30th, 6 days after Laci's disappearance, a Fresno massage therapist named Amber Frey called the Modesto Police Department. She had a story that would blow the investigation wide open. Amber explained that she'd been dating Scott Peterson since November, introduced by a mutual friend who vouched for his character. Scott had told her he was single, never mentioning a wife, let alone a pregnant one. He'd spun elaborate stories about traveling to Paris, claimed to be ready for a serious relationship, even hinted at future plans together. The timeline was devastating. While Laci decorated their nursery and planned their baby's first Christmas, Scott was wooing another woman with lies about his availability and intentions. Phone records showed he'd called Amber from his fishing trip on December 24th, the very day his wife disappeared. But the most chilling detail emerged from a conversation they'd had weeks earlier. On December 9th, more than 2 weeks before Laci vanished, Scott had told Amber this would be his first Christmas without his wife. When she asked what he meant, he claimed his wife had died, and he was dreading the holidays. The statement sent ice through investigators' veins. Either Scott Peterson was psychic, or he was planning something unspeakable. As 2003 began, the search for Laci Peterson expanded beyond Modesto. Volunteers scoured the Central Valley, following tips and leads that numbered in the thousands. The Rocha family, led by Laci's determined mother Sharon, refused to give up hope, organizing candlelight vigils and maintaining a constant media presence. Scott's behavior during this period became increasingly bizarre. While searchers combed through fields and waterways, he sold Laci's car and put their house on the market. He told real estate agents his wife had died in a car accident, a lie so callous it defied comprehension. Media attention reached fever pitch when Scott appeared on Good Morning America in January 2003. Diane Sawyer's probing questions clearly made him uncomfortable. When she asked about his affair with Amber Frey, Scott admitted to being unfaithful, but claimed it had no bearing on Laci's disappearance. "Did you murder your wife?" Sawyer asked directly. "No, "No, I did not," Scott replied. But his body language told a different story. He shifted uncomfortably, avoided eye contact, and seemed more concerned with his public image than finding his missing family. Police surveillance revealed even more damning behavior. Scott bleached his hair, grew a goatee, and was caught researching how to change his appearance online. He'd converted Laci's missing person reward money into cash and had his brother's passport in his possession, suggesting plans to flee. On April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog along the rocky shore of San Francisco Bay made a grisly discovery. The body of a full-term male fetus had washed ashore near Richmond. The next day, just miles away, a jogger found the badly decomposed remains of a woman. DNA testing confirmed investigators' worst fears. The bodies were Laci and Connor Peterson. After nearly 4 months of searching, hoping, and praying, the nightmare had become reality. Laci had been murdered, and her unborn son had died with her. The location of the bodies was particularly damning for Scott. They were found less than 2 miles from where he claimed to have been fishing on December 24th. The odds of this being coincidental were astronomical. Prosecutors now had the physical evidence they needed to build a murder case. But the condition of the remains told a horrifying story. Laci's head and limbs were missing, likely severed to help the body sink. The brutality required to dismember a pregnant woman, your own wife and child, spoke to a level of coldness that shocked even hardened investigators. On April 18, 2003, Scott Peterson was arrested near the Mexican border, carrying $15,000 in cash, camping gear, and survival supplies. His appearance had changed dramatically. The clean-cut salesman now sported reddish hair and a full beard. He claimed to be golfing, but the evidence suggested someone preparing to disappear forever. The arrest triggered a media frenzy that dwarfed even the initial disappearance coverage. Scott Peterson had become America's most hated man, a symbol of domestic violence and betrayal that struck fear into the hearts of pregnant women everywhere. The trial, which began in June 2004, became a daily soap opera for millions of Americans. Court TV carried gavel-to-gavel coverage as prosecutors painted Scott as a narcissistic sociopath who killed his family to escape the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood. The prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, but it was overwhelming in its totality. Scott's lies about his whereabouts, his affair with Amber Frey, his suspicious behavior after Laci's disappearance, and the location where the bodies were found all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Defense attorney Mark Garagos argued that Scott was being railroaded by public opinion and media coverage. He suggested that Laci had been murdered by someone else, possibly during a robbery gone wrong, and that Scott was merely an unfaithful husband, not a killer. But the most damaging testimony came from Amber Frey herself. Playing recorded phone calls between her and Scott, prosecutors revealed the defendant's capacity for manipulation and deceit. Even as massive search efforts were underway for his missing pregnant wife, Scott was planning romantic getaways with his mistress. On November 12, 2004, after deliberating for 7 days, the jury delivered their verdict. Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Laci Peterson and second-degree murder in the death of Connor Peterson. The courtroom erupted as the Rocha family finally heard the words they'd been waiting nearly 2 years to hear. The penalty phase proved equally dramatic. Prosecutors argued that Scott deserved the death penalty for the calculated murder of his pregnant wife. The defense pleaded for life in prison, arguing that Scott's lack of prior violent behavior should spare him execution. On December 13, 2004, the same jury that convicted Scott Peterson sentenced him to death. As the verdict was read, Scott showed no emotion, the same cold detachment that had characterized his behavior since Laci's disappearance. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, finally had her chance to address her daughter's killer directly. Through tears, she told Scott that he had not only murdered Laci and Connor, but had also destroyed both families forever. Her words carried the weight of a mother's grief and a grandmother's loss that would never heal. Scott Peterson was transferred to San Quentin State Prison, joining California's death row. For years, he maintained his innocence, while his legal team filed appeal after appeal, arguing that pretrial publicity and other factors had denied him a fair trial. The case's impact extended far beyond the courtroom. It highlighted the epidemic of domestic violence against pregnant women, a crime that occurs more often than most people realize. Studies show that homicide is a leading cause of death for pregnant women, with intimate partners responsible for the majority of these murders. The Laci Peterson case also changed how missing person cases are investigated and covered by media. The intense scrutiny Scott faced became a template for future cases, though critics argued that pretty pregnant white women received disproportionate attention compared to missing women of color. In 2020, Scott's death sentence was overturned by the California Supreme Court due to jury selection issues, though his conviction remained intact. He was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never walk free again. Despite Scott's conviction, questions about the case persist. Exactly how and where did he kill Laci? What happened to her missing body parts? Did he act alone, or did someone help him dispose of the bodies? Some alternative theories have emerged over the years, suggesting that Laci might have been killed by burglars or that Scott was framed. A few vocal supporters continue to proclaim his innocence, pointing to perceived flaws in the investigation and prosecution. But for most observers, the evidence remains overwhelming. Scott Peterson killed his pregnant wife because she represented an obstacle to the bachelor lifestyle he preferred. Rather than face the responsibilities of fatherhood and the work required to save his marriage, he chose murder. The case also revealed the devastating impact of seemingly small lies and betrayals. Scott's affair might have been forgivable, his wandering attention addressable through counseling. Instead, his unwillingness to confront his problems honestly led to the ultimate betrayal, the murder of his own family. 20 years after that Christmas Eve phone call, the Laci Peterson case continues to haunt American consciousness. It serves as a stark reminder that evil can wear a friendly face, that the person you share your bed with might harbor the darkest secrets. For the Rocha family, there is no happy ending, no closure that brings back their beloved Laci and the grandson they never got to meet. Sharon Rocha has become an advocate for victims' rights, channeling her grief into helping other families navigate similar tragedies. The case also stands as a testament to the power of persistent investigation and the importance of believing in justice even when faced with seemingly perfect crimes. Detective Al Burkini and his team never gave up, following every lead and examining every inconsistency until the truth emerged. Perhaps most importantly, Laci Peterson's story reminds us that behind every headline is a real person whose life mattered. She wasn't just a victim or a cautionary tale. She was a daughter, a wife, an expectant mother full of dreams and plans that were brutally cut short. The image that should remain with us isn't of Scott Peterson in handcuffs or courtroom sketches of legal proceedings. It should be of Laci Peterson laughing in her garden, hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly, planning the Christmas that would never come. In the end, that's what makes this case so heartbreaking and so enduring. It's not just about a murder that shocked America. It's about the extinguishing of a light that should still be shining today, and the little boy who never got the chance to take his first breath. The truth may have taken nearly 2 years to emerge, but it did emerge. And in that truth, Laci and Connor Peterson finally found the justice they deserved, even if it could never bring them home.